Greetings friends on the Cryptosphere channel. This is the case when you do not need to look for a black cat in a black room. It does not matter if it is there or not, because everything is basically on the surface. I am referring to the price movement of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market in particular. So far, according to the first days of the new year, it looks like that indeed due to the holidays, although liquidity is increasing. But it is not enough. Any news, whether positive, such as Trump's approval by the US Congress, or negative, which is related to the chain of facts that we will analyze today, throws up or throws down the cryptocurrency market quite decently. And so, look at the 2025 movement chart in front of you. It is like nerves. But if we turn our head from the cryptocurrency market to the traditional market, we get basically the same story there, right away. I show the heat map of the S&P 500, where we see that the technology sector is in and out, and that out is led by the most popular stock of 2024, Nvidia. There are of course additional factors. Yesterday was the release of US statistics, and Trump was adding fuel to the fire, all of which we'll be looking at today. Before I start reviewing the highlights of yesterday, I would like to say that Bitcoin is rising today, falling tomorrow, rising even more the day after tomorrow, only to fall again. This is called, first of all, volatility, and secondly, no one is saying that if you see the sun outside today, it does not mean that it will not rain tomorrow. The weather is changing, seasons are changing, and so is the economic meadow, where the weather is different every day. Well, seasonality is also present. I mean bear and bull market. So, there is nothing surprising in the swings. The important thing is to understand what causes these swings. I guess I'll start my narrative with Trump, who gives a lot of reasons to talk about himself. So I made a selection of his statements just yesterday. Understandably, the markets are wary at these statements. He says interest rates are too high. He reiterates that he will overturn Biden's ban on offshore drilling. Trump says we are going to have to do something about trade Canada or Mexico. He says he will change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Trump threatens Denmark with tariffs over Greenland. Trump refuses to rule out economic military tools for Panama. He goes on to say, I want to see an extension of the debt ceiling and a number of other statements he made. This was just from yesterday. Markets react to headlines like this. Clearly, there is just the typical fear that Trump might hit some wood. In the wake of such statements, who would condemn a man who would observe a wait-and-see attitude, sit in cash? But this is only the tip of the iceberg, because one could get used to such words of Trump. But then we include economic events, because one could get used to such words of Trump. But then we include economic events. I realize that US statistics are more important than Nvidia's stock movement, but for now I am touching on Nvidia's movement. As you can see, the stock of this company is falling after the presentation. Investors expected something more from this presentation, as Bloomberg writes that although Nvidia's announcements yesterday were significant, they are long-term in nature. It is always in the long-term nature that something can go wrong. Basically, a lot of statements were made at this presentation. Some investors were even a bit hesitant, because the company's plans seemed excessive to some, and there are voices that the company is trying to grab everything. As a result, after the initial assessment of all these presentations, the company is down 6 against a not quite good macroeconomic background. I have already said about Trump, where the nerve of his statements can be felt. Now let's move on to the US statistics, which also did not please investors. If anyone thinks it has nothing to do with Bitcoin at all, it is all from another universe. That's wrong. The same headlines tell us that Bitcoin was falling yesterday on positive labor market data. As I said, one statistical cluster is not enough, but Trump, Nvidia, and this data could have quietly pushed Bitcoin down, and yesterday's movement with sharp moments is an example of that. Let's get to know what those statistics were, and here we see that US job openings hit a 6-month high in November, helped by a jump in business services, whereas in other industries, labor demand was more mixed. Available job openings rose to 8.1 million from an upwardly revised 7.8 million in October. The figure beat all estimates in the economist's question, meaning it was above the consensus forecast. The increase was driven almost entirely by vacancies in professional and business services, which reached near two-year highs, also in finance and insurance. Meanwhile, vacancies declined in food service accommodation as well as manufacturing. In any case, the data for the Federal Reserve is strong and they are still very likely to press pause at their next meeting, although it is probably clear to everyone already. And Trump's views on this I just voiced. One of his quotes says that interest rates are too high and the Federal Reserve will meet right after the inauguration, and it is unlikely to give him a gift in the form of a reduction. I realize that everyone and everything will know the data on Bitcoin ETHs in 3 hours. But for me this is the latest information that I got 10 minutes ago. It just came out and this chart is an example of it. And it started this morning with a less pretty picture. As you can see, it has been draining quite nicely, without BlackRock. The drain was $543 million, but a major asset manager player came in and changed everything in the Bitcoin ETH market. As a result, from a giant minus we got a tiny plus for Bitcoin ETHs. A plus of $53 million. In principle, it would not be surprising if BlackRock joined the minus as well, considering how many assets they have under management. But we did get still amazing numbers, and due to investors adding 600 million, the Bitcoin ETH even went against the markets a bit. Next, let's take a look at what the day ahead has in store for us. There will be a number of interesting statistics today. And I am not taking the change in non-farm payrolls from software vendors as a major market trigger. It is rarely paid attention to. It is only paid attention to in a comparative analysis when this employment change is released on Friday. This implies that some manipulation is involved, because the private sector will do the data here, and the government will do it on Friday. Of course, the number of initial claims for unemployment benefits as well as the total number of people receiving unemployment benefits is our focus, especially after yesterday's statistics. And then the day will end with the Federal Reserve minutes, the so-called Fed minutes. I remind you that of course the Fed made a lot of noise at its last meeting. Probably it is important for us to answer the question whether all the things related to the past Federal Reserve data have been played out and whether the wounds have been healed or whether they will be reopened in a new way. So, it should be a busy day. Friends, I recommend subscribing to the channel where you'll find tons of additional information on both the cryptocurrency and traditional market. Today's video just so happens we discussed all the things that have influenced the cryptocurrency market. But life does not stop there. But there is also an opinion that the cryptocurrency market will even fall below the $33.0 mark. This is something I am also studying, because studying different points of view is the way to go. That's all. Cryptosphere was with you. Subscribe. If you are not subscribed yet for some reason, click on the bell to not miss new videos, because next will be even more interesting. Bye.